And we are live. G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and you are listening to My Creative Journey, Season 2, Episode number 14. Today, we are stepping into the dynamic world of wedding videography with my guest, Steve from Popping the Bubble. Steve is a talented and self-taught wedding videographer who transformed his passion for storytelling into a thriving full-time career. Steve originally reached out to me on Instagram, and we came across each other because he asked me a question on Instagram in the form of a video when I was doing collaborations and reaching out for people to submit questions to me. And the world of wedding videography really intrigues me because as a photographer, I think there are so many parallels, but there are so many differences as well. And being able to pull different creative nuggets from what he's been able to do was so interesting through this conversation. And hearing how much we have in common is super important, but also the differences and the way that he thinks about his creativity and goes about crafting a film for other people and telling stories through video, I think is super important. And I learned so much from this episode, and I know that you guys will as well. Steve's journey is anything but conventional. I think starting out, he filmed a wedding for a friend and then discovered his joy of creativity and capturing those moments through doing that for a friend, and then jumped into it full time. He's built a unique approach to his own wedding videography, very authentic and very funny, and has a joke with clients. And I think that's one of the things that we get across in this episode. It's just how laid back yet professional Steve is. He really cares a lot about his clients, but also is happy to have a joke and get to relate to them a lot as well, get that very interpersonal connection with his clients. And that's how he's able to generate a lot of emotion and tell really good stories in his films, because he gets to know his clients really well. We speak about the challenges of creating films, the highs and lows, how to maintain creativity in the pressure of client expectations of what they want for their day, for their film to look like, but also balancing his own creativity and what style he brings to the table. So we jump into all of those different things, even small little things about how he chooses his music for his films, which I think is just something so far outside of the norm of what I do. I'm very much in control as a photographer when I'm creating the art, but when it comes to choosing music, there has to be an element of the client involved, and you've got to be thinking about them, and we touch on that a lot in this episode. So whether you're an enthusiast in videography, whether you just love weddings, whether you're here for the creativity, this episode is going to be jam-packed full of inspirational stories from Steve himself, a lot of good jokes from Steve as well. This was a funny conversation, and I loved hearing about how Steve has been able to bring his personality into his business. So I want to throw that over to Steve to talk all about that in this episode. But before we do that, I do want to address the fact that this is the first episode that you will hear being recorded from the caravan. I'm currently traveling on the road. This is the first episode recorded from the caravan. The rest of the episodes have been pre-recorded up until now. You may have noticed the intro in the last couple of episodes in the caravan as well. So there have been a few technical difficulties along the way. I do apologize for that. Hopefully that they're not interrupting the conversation too much. If you're watching the video, you might notice a little bit of a glitch and lag here and there. But the audio, hopefully it comes through okay. This episode dropped in and out a little bit. Stevie's in the UK. I'm here in Australia in the middle of nowhere trying to record episodes of this podcast. Blessed that I'm able to do it, but there have been a few lags and a few little glitches here and there. So if you do hear them, it's not you, it's not your internet connection, it's probably in the episode, and hopefully we're getting it fixed up for the next couple of episodes after this one. So enjoy this episode, and I hope that you guys are able to gain a lot from it. I'll throw you guys over to Steve right now. Hey Mike. Well, hello, Stephen. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been, I would say, a long time in the making. I think I've cancelled on you like twice at this point. But, you know, you're the third person I've had on from the UK. And the time zone, just getting a time that works for both of us. Like, I think you're 11 hours behind me at the moment. So the other end of the day, it's early morning there for you. It's evening here for me. Making that time work has been hard, but I do appreciate you jumping on today.
No, thank you for having us on, man. Like, this is quite bizarre. So it's 9 o'clock in the morning here. So what time is it over there?
It's 8 p.m. here at the moment. So, yeah. But you got to make it work, right?
Yeah, man. It's absolutely awesome that this is even happening. The internet is wild, man.
It is crazy. I feel like I'm currently traveling at the moment, for anyone that doesn't know. So even to be able to have that and to be able to have this conversation while I'm traveling on the road, to be able to get internet and have this whole hookup is just crazy. So even like more wild that we can connect across the world.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. And you're in the back of a van. How cool is that?
It is really wild, actually. I think if anyone's watching on YouTube, you'll probably see the change of background. I'm in a bed at the moment, so I've tried to make it. I had to get everything out to be able to record this episode, but hopefully it still comes across okay. In the audio version, you probably won't even really notice a difference, hopefully. So, how about we talk about how we first connected? We connected on Instagram, obviously, and you actually sent me a video question that you wanted to ask me that I thought was really cool. So you're a wedding videographer, which I'm always intrigued by, that whole world of wedding videography, because being a photographer myself, I spend a lot of time working with other sort of videographers, but I don't really know what they do. So, because I am always too busy wrapped up in my own work. And so when I hear from a videographer, I'm always interested to hear what it is they do, and hopefully through this episode we can actually learn a little bit more. I wanted to ask, how did you get started in that career?
It's a bit of a weird story actually, because it was never the plan to get into weddings, into wedding videography. So I picked up a camera when I was like 12, 13. And I remember my dad saying, like, you should get into weddings. And I was like, no, Dad. I was a teenager. I was like, no, Dad, I'm going to be in a band. We're going to be huge. And yeah, that sort of, it fell on the back burners for a little bit. And I used to make like rubbish little documentaries for like YouTube and stuff just to keep my creative brain sort of ticking over. And then one day, one of my friends from school was like, "Oh, can you film my wedding?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And that's when I realised, actually, this is a lot of fun. It's so much fun, and you can have a laugh with the couple. Because up to now, hopefully anyway, up to now, I've never met a sad person on their wedding day. So you can have a laugh with it. You can be quite creative with it, but you do still have to follow a formula as such. And yeah, we fell into this purely by accident, but it was probably the best accident that ever happened. It's so cool because you do get to be part of, the most important day of a lot of people's lives. And you're quite a big part of that as well. And we do get messages like every now and then where like the bride and groom will actually dig out their video on their anniversary. We actually got a message last night, actually. The bride and groom, so we always send out a highlights film and a feature film. So the highlights are what you'll see on like Instagram, things like that. The feature film is just like a longer version of that. So they've got the full ceremony, full speeches. They haven't watched it yet. They haven't watched the feature film. They're waiting for the first anniversary. And I just think that's really cool. So that film's going to live with them, hopefully, forever.
How do you feel about that, about in terms of like the art not being consumed for a year afterwards? I feel like that's really cool, and a lot of people wouldn't be able to hold themselves back.
It's really weird because obviously when you do send, when you'll send a gallery and then you don't hear anything back and you're like, oh my God, they hate it. What have I done? But these guys, so they got the highlights film. They said thank you for when they got the feature film, and that was it. I just assumed they'd watched it. So when I got that message last night, I thought like, oh Christ, I hope it was decent. I can't even remember it now. So yeah, they've saved it for a full year to sit and watch it on Monday, which is mad.
There is a lot to be said for how fast you turn around work. And I think for me, I like to get it within that month because I think that's a good amount of time. I think too fast and you still haven't had enough chance for like nostalgia to get in the way. Like you still have that solid like memory of the day. But if you give it a month, you give it 2 months, it's enough for it to spark something back. But then if it goes too long, you're like, oh, well, now I'm just, I'm after it now. It can start to be a bit of a hassle.
No, I don't like to leave it too long because I did that last year, actually. So last year, because I've been doing this for about 9 years, it was always a bit of a side hustle. And then I got made redundant from a job that I really loved. And I thought, right, I'll go into weddings full time. And that's when it just sort of blew up. And I had an editing queue. I think I had about 12 in the editing queue at one point. And that's when my head fell off a little bit, and I was like, oh, there's too much work to do. And people were waiting a good 2 months for just a highlights film. But I took that personally, I took it as if it was my fault. But it wasn't. I think a lot of it's sort of being able to focus. Like obviously with yourself, you'll probably find it as well. Working from home sounds fantastic until you actually do it. Because when you work from home, you never actually leave work.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think that's something that a lot of people go through, especially like yourself, when you were working a job and then you ended and you go right into a heavy season for yourself. You you almost feel like you're on top of the world, and you're like, I'm working for myself now. This is amazing. It could never get better than this. And you realize, oh, hang on a minute, this is starting to just always working.
It was scary, man, because obviously you're not just, you're the camera person, you're the editor, you are a content creator, and the admin person and marketing and stuff like that. And it was a scary time, and I let it get on top of me. So that's why this year I've really managed to sort of just focus. I find a really good way of focusing is just commit yourself to 20 minutes. If you can commit yourself to that 20 minutes, usually that gets your sort of brain into a bit of a hyper focus. It does for me anyway. So I've managed to sort of keep on top of editing this year. Up to now.
It's always a struggle, isn't it? There's always something else you could be working on. And that organization for me, I think in the back of my mind has always been a struggle of being like, what do I prioritize? What comes first? I'm not someone that can sit down for a whole day and work on one project. So I need to sort of break it up and give myself an hour chunk, or, half day of this, half day of that. But then prioritizing those things can be even harder.
Absolutely. So I'm one of these people. I'm actually going to the doctors at the moment to maybe be diagnosed for ADHD. But I'm one of these people that I can't get anything done unless I have a to-do list. So if it's not on my to-do list, it doesn't get done. And my to-do list last night, I think I finally got done at about 9, half 9. Because it has to get done. If it's on the list, it gets done.
And you're a person who writes that list every day?
Every day. Otherwise, nothing will get done. I will sit on my phone and watch reels and just scroll mindlessly. You'll know yourself, you'll have so many plates sort of spinning at once. And it's trying to prioritize those plates. And then sometimes you'll drop one. It's so easy to do because I'm one of these people that needs telling what to do sometimes. And again, because you work for yourself, you don't have a manager breathing down your neck. You don't have a specific break time or a specific lunch time or anything like that. I'll get distracted, and I'll just go to the fridge, and I'll end up eating half of the fridge, coming back, and they're just like, "What was I doing?"
How did you learn to, control yourself, or learn to give yourself those sort of deadlines on things, because you are your own boss?
I think mainly, like I say, last year, my head fell off massively. So I was not in a good place mentally because I had all these things in the queue sort of weighing me down. And I think I've sort of scared myself into behaving, if that makes sense. Scare myself into, you need to get this done, because like I think I've got 3 in the queue at the moment. But I know for a fact I've got a wedding tomorrow, I've got a wedding on Saturday, and then a wedding the next 2 Saturdays. So I may think I've got 3 in the queue. I've actually got about 6 or 7 in the queue.
Are you someone that like works in order of, as the project's done, that's the next one out?
Absolutely, yeah. Again, I like to try and sort of keep things as simple as possible. When you start queue jumping people, that's when it can get confusing. That's why we only offer one package as well. I know there's some videographers, you can pay extra for drone footage and pay extra for ceremony and speeches and stuff like that. I was just like, do you know what? One package, all in. If you don't want it, go somewhere else. And we're definitely not for everyone. So where we are, there's a few videographers, I would say, around us that are sort of, we're all around the same sort of level, if that makes sense. But I would say, so there's the consummate professional guy. There is the absolute cinematic masterpiece guy, and then there's us. We're just like the cheeky chappies. We just try and have a laugh with you, basically. And it's all to do with advertising and the way we advertise on socials. I prefer to give them as much of me as possible because that's what they're going to experience on their wedding day. I'm quite sort of laid back, try to be funny, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to show up on a wedding day and pretend to be someone I'm not and be like, good afternoon, my name's Steve. Today we're going to do this. I literally rock up in the morning. I was like, right, where's the party at? Come on, let's go. Because that's what people want.
Yeah, it's not what everyone wants, but it's for what your people want. And I think understanding that is really important for a lot of people because so many people question whether they can be themselves. And I'm always telling people there's a market for you. It's out there. You just haven't found it yet.
Exactly. People book, obviously they book you for your work and stuff like that, but they also book you as a person because you're going to be spending most of the day with them. Like we had a really good example the other week, actually. So someone booked us for the VW. So we've got a VW bus. They booked us for the VW to take them from the church, I think, to the venue. They followed us on socials, and then they actually messaged us and said, we seem quite fun. Can we do their wedding video as well? So I was like, yeah, absolutely. So again, that's just put your personality across on socials or your website or whatever and build it and they'll come, basically, hopefully.
You said you went into a big sort of season when you got made redundant for your job. Did you think a lot of that came off the back of you just branding yourself really well?
I think so. Maybe because I did have what I call like a proper job at the time. I wasn't too scared if I was going to lose bookings or anything because I was doing 40 hours a week working for someone else. And then on a night, I was coming home and doing my second job, which was editing. So I wasn't too scared about losing the bookings when I had the proper job. And then I actually realized when I did sort of jump into this full time, there is a market for, the cheeky sort of side of things. It's the kind of marketing that I respond to anyway. So I just thought, oh, we'll give it a try. And it seems to work. I'm not a marketing guru or anything like that. I literally just throw out a bit of me and just see what sticks.
Not many of us who run our own business want to go into it to be in marketing. And so to hear that just being yourself works, I think is important because, you don't have to go and reinvent the wheel. You don't have to come up with a whole campaign about how you can market yourself. Just be you, be yourself, and they will respond to that very well.
So yeah, I think I've found, especially with Instagram, and you'll have noticed this as well, Mike, is Instagram have sort of moved the goalposts a lot recently. So obviously, when you started, Instagram was for photographs, and short form video was for like Vine and TikTok and stuff like that. And now it's completely flipped it on its head. So now you're not just a photographer. You yourself are a videographer as well, because that's why I picked you up watching your videos. Everyone now at weddings, you'll notice like makeup artists, and they'll have their phone up like that, and hair people, and everyone's got to get the content because otherwise it just gets lost by the algorithm gods. And I've found that such a strange sort of shift. It's worked great for videographers, but not so much for photographers. You are primarily a photographer, but I picked you up through your video content, and it's just everyone's got to sort of make that switch now. I know a lot of photographers, especially around us, are just adding the words "and film" at the end of their business name because they have to introduce film to keep on top of the curve nowadays. which is fine. You know, there's plenty of work. There's plenty. People will always get married. Um, there's plenty of work to go around, and that's why I think, you know, you've got to sort of stand out in a sea of people who could be kind of stuffy sometimes. You know, like, yes, you know, your wedding's going to be the most important day of your life. Blah 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 blah. You know, whereas we're just like, yeah, it is going to be an important day. It's going to be fun. Let's make it fun. Um, you know, I hate sort of asking people to smile. I think it looks really corny, especially on film. So obviously, yeah. So we'll let the photographer do what they need to do. Obviously, they've got a job to do as well. But we'll sort of try and catch the bits in between. And when we do go out and do like couple shots, um, obviously the photographer will get them to pose, whereas I will just like crack bad jokes, like really, really bad jokes, because you can tell the difference between smile and someone actually laughing. It translates so much better.
You've already sort of set that up because you know that they're your type of people who will respond to those jokes. And again, I think that this is another reason why attracting your clients is the perfect thing, because the work that you produce will increase exponentially because of the fact that they are your type of people. So they will work, they'll respond to you, you'll be able to work with them really well. Like, if you don't want awkward clients, don't be an awkward person, because you won't attract them. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard because when people say, "Oh, I'm not getting the type of work that I want. I'm not getting the style of work that I'm interested in having. I want to be at these days that are really fun and energetic, but I'm not attracting those clients." Well, have a look at what you're doing to market, but that you're sort of getting those people through the door. So the work is going to keep reflecting that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And they're the ones that are a lot more like, again, to me, a lot more fun to edit as well. So I think I realised this the other day, is we don't have a particular style as such. So we don't have a style as such, but I will take pieces of that couple and I'll clock things throughout the day, and I'll be like, right, that. Um, so I can do like a really sort of hype wedding video for one couple, and the one I've just finished actually was a lot more sort of lovey-dovey. The way they looked at each other, it was so nice. But like a hyped up song didn't really suit that film, and it didn't suit that couple. So I had to sort of change my style accordingly for that. Um, it's a weird thing to have to do, but it's a really nice film, and it made them cry. So
At the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? Like, they are the audience. That they're the only ones that really matter what it's like. You talked about Instagram and that. You can post your work on there, and you can receive like mixed reviews from people. But when the client is happy, I think that is the most important thing.
100%. I think it's quite easy to forget sometimes who you're shooting for. So obviously, we've worked with some photographers before, and you can tell they're just shooting to make their portfolio look good. We worked with one photographer, and I won't say any names, but he had 65 group shots to get through, and he had them from the moment they got married to about 9:30 at night when we left. And we heard the bride say at some point, like, "This isn't what I thought it would be." And I felt so sorry for them. Like, he'd literally spent the entire day taking the photograph, and I just thought, you haven't actually got time to sort of drink it all in and experience it, because you stood taking photos. Will come first at the end of the day, and that's why I always say, so we always meet the couples at the pub beforehand, because it's usually like quite a sort of chilled out place for them. I don't want to make them feel like they're under like a light or anything, going to shine a light in their eyes. We always meet them at the pub to try and make them feel comfortable. And we always say, so like, the photographer will have all the group shots to do. That's when we'll leave them to do that. Again, looks great on photographs, translates terrible to film. So when they're doing the group shots, that's when we'll go see what's happening at the bar, or see what the kids are doing, or go get some B-roll. But once they've done that, they'll obviously do the couple shots, and we'll sort of rejoin for the couple shots. When we go out and do the couple shots on the night, hopefully for a sunset, we've had none this year. It's been rubbish. But when we go and do the sunset shots, we always say, you can say no. This is your wedding. This isn't our film shoot. So we'll go out, we'll get the shots that we need, hopefully some lovely sunset shots. But once we've done that, I like to sort of say to the couple, right, we've dragged you away from the party. You two stay here for 10 minutes. We'll go back to the party. We'll see what's happening. You two stay here on your own and just have 10 minutes to yourself. Because otherwise, on your wedding day, you don't get that. Everyone wants to talk to you. Everyone wants to buy you a pint. So we like to give them that 10 minutes just to chill.
It's crazy because those are the types of things they will really hold on to. And they'll be like, oh, remember when Steve told us to have 10 minutes? And that was the most special 10 minutes we had all day.
Yeah, it is. I mean, so me and my missus, we got married in 2019, just before the world went mental. So we got married in 2019 and we didn't get that 10 minutes. And I really wish we did. And again, it goes back to the sort of the whole posing side of things. I felt really awkward on the wrong side of the camera. So I know how that feels. So I will take that into my actual work now, and try and make it as less cringy for them as possible. And that's why we try and make them laugh and just have a chat with them.
Let's talk about your process, because I know you were saying before, like, there's obviously things that you have to sort of follow to get a good result at the end of the day. Types of, you obviously going with a plan of what types of clips you need to get. Obviously, it's informed by what's happening on the day. But what is your sort of process? What do you have in mind when you're going through the types of clips that you need to get for your final edit?
So we have shots that we know we need and the shots that we know we don't need. I used to get like loads of mingling shots and stuff like that, but they just don't get used. Again, like your sort of off guard shots. They look great on photographs. They look a bit weird on film. So the process is mainly, obviously, you've got like the big shots, the first kiss, the walk down the aisle, stuff like that. But again, we'll just sort of play it by ear because we've been doing it for so long. You can get a vibe from a couple as soon as you meet them at the pub. You can get a vibe, and you can think, right, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. And on their wedding day, I am building their film in my head. I'm building the edit in my head, so I know what shots we need, and what shots we can sort of get away with. Because again, I don't like posing people, but some couples want that sort of, especially with TikTok and stuff, they want that posy sort of look, like the fire and ice sort of vibes. Some couples want that, and if they want that, I'm down for it.
I thought that was really interesting when you were talking about building the edit out in your head while you're working. Like, that's one of the really creative aspects that I think a lot of people overlook, that what comes into working on days that are so unpredictable. Like, you have to be able to think on the fly.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I can think of so many actually, where you're shooting it, obviously, because we shoot with our screens out, our LCD screens out, and you see it on the back of the camera, and I've clocked it, and I'm just like, that's awesome. And you just think, right, I'm having that. Obviously, because I always use a second shooter as well. So that's just like a standard thing for us. It's always 2 videographers for the full day. So I won't see what's coming out of the back of my second shooter's camera until I get it on the computer. But I will always ask. So when we sit down for a little break, sit down for something to eat. So, second shooter, what bangers have you got today? And they'll flip through and just show me. And as soon as I've seen it, I'm like, right, that can go there, that can go there. And then it's just a case of finding the right music. As long as we've got the right music, then you've got an awesome film.
How do you go about choosing that?
It's a nightmare. Any videographer will tell you exactly the same thing. You can literally spend days trying to find the right music, because I'm a bit of an audio snob as well. So, like, I always believe, like, if you've got crap music, then you've got a crap film, or crap audio. Sorry, you've got a crap film. You can spend days trying to find the right music. You start putting it into the edit, and you get a couple of days into the edit, and you're just like, something's not working. Something's not working. It's 90% of the time, it's the music. I did that on the last one. Pulled the music out, put something completely different in, completely different film, completely different edit.
Is it easy enough to be able to like switch them in and out, or do you go back and restart edits again?
It's it can be a bit of a nightmare because I think it's not just myself. Like, a lot of videographers will do it. Is they'll sort of edit to the beat or edit to changes in the music. So your clip will end on a snare or a drum beat or something like that. So obviously, if it's a different song, your shots will already be in your timeline. So it's just a case of, hopefully, usually, just sort of making them a little bit longer, making them a little bit shorter and choppier. But yeah, music is a nightmare. Before copyright laws got really, really strict, we used to use like pop music, like Ed Sheeran, and I'm trying to think, like actual music in the charts. We used to get the licenses for it. But then if you put it anywhere online, it just gets ripped down. And there was like, I was going against like Sony, I was going up against Warner Brothers every weekend, saying, oh, you haven't got the licenses to this? Yes, we have. Here they are. So we used to ask the couples, what kind of music are you into? But I've always found that quite a loaded question. So if I said to you, Mike, what sort of music are you into? Like, that's a huge question. My music taste goes from everything from like Slipknot to The Greatest Showman. So it's completely varied. So all I'll do again is like, we'll get a vibe from the couple on the day. If they're into sort of a bit more rocky music, I'll remember that and I'll pick a bit of a more sort of guitar-led track. This one that I've just finished, they were into a bit more sort of 80s. It was very sort of chilled out music. So this one got a chilled out song. We had this couple and they met over a sort of mutual love of hip hop, sort of old school 50 Cent, Eminem, stuff like that. And I thought, do you know what? It's time. I'm finally going to make a wedding video to a hip hop track. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun to do something a little bit different.
I want to know how you maintain the creativity and how do you keep it fresh?
It can be quite hard. On my days off, I will sit on YouTube and I will try and learn new techniques and new effects, and sort of try and keep on top of things that are happening. So I'll try and incorporate these sort of things into wedding videos. Things that probably shouldn't be in wedding videos, but I will try my best just to sort of stand out a little bit. Because again, wedding videos, I think when we started all this, it was a completely different sort of industry, but they were all very sort of samey. They all sort of followed a formula. They were all quite lovey-dovey, and we came along and we were just like, right, let's try and make this a bit more exciting. It's at the end of the day, it's a celebration. And we tried to sort of make it a bit more quirky. That's how we used to market ourselves. And then there was sort of a dip, I would say, a couple of years into it, and we sort of fell into this trap of slow motion, lovey-dovey, blah, 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 trying to get everything super smooth. And then when I finally got everything super smooth with gimbals and software and stuff like that, that's when I thought, do you know what? I quite like shaky camera footage now. So it's really weird. You just sort of, I don't know, you spend a lot of time trying to perfect this craft. And then when you've actually perfected it, you think, actually, it was better when it was like shaky, not shaky camera footage, but more sort of dynamic. And a bit more interesting to watch, I suppose. So, especially in this industry, it could be really, really easy to overproduce something. Um, well, technically, not very easy, but creatively, you can sort of think like, oh, this needs to be perfect, this needs to be perfect, this needs to be perfect. But at the end of the day, you're there to, and again, this is just my view on it. You're there to document it as it happened, warts and all. So we've had weddings sometimes, especially because we film the speeches as well, and you get like a best man, and you're just like, can he say that? But it happened, so it stays in.
I'm always someone that's like, I don't want to artificially create things that didn't happen. I don't want to put people in positions that aren't real to them or that weren't actually there on the day, because then when they look back on those, they're always like, that was weird. Like, that didn't happen on my day. Like, imagine looking back in a year's time and being like, I don't remember that. Like, that didn't happen. Like, why would you want to put something in there that's not real? Because these are someone's like memories of this day. Trying to keep it as true to as possible, I think, is the best way for it to come across.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you need to make it as true to life as possible. Obviously, you've got a bit of artistic sort of flair that you can use. But obviously, I always just sort of say, don't take it too far. Because there's a fine line between, like, at the end of the day, we're not making like the new Transformers film or anything like that. We're just there documenting your wedding day as it happened. There will always be shots that you can set up or shots that were set up. But I don't like to sort of, they're not actors, they're not actors, they're not paid, they paid a lot of money for us to be there. So I'm not going to tell them what to do. They're my boss.
Where did you learn to sort of put this stuff together for? Like, you're a sort of paid director now, a paid producer. Where did you learn to do all of this type of stuff, or had it just come to you over time?
So it was all self-taught, to be honest. So when I first picked up a camera, it was, I'm going to sound so old here, but when I first picked up a camera, it was a VHS. It was like a Sony Handycam, but it was like that. And I used to edit tape to tape. And then it was my dad who noticed that I spent all my time in my room editing from tape to tape, which is a really lengthy process. And then one Christmas, he sorted us out with my first digital. It was a computer, but it had like a digital editing software on it, which was a game changer back in the day. And I made my first film, and it was awful. But I had the sort of the basics were there. And again, I'm a bit of an audio nerd, so I used to like write songs, write music, stuff like that. Music production and video production are very, very similar. So you've got your timeline, you've got your clips, and you just put them in the timeline and you build it like a wall. So it was almost like a second nature. And then when I went for a couple of jobs, video editing, I used to use a really old system. And this one guy sent me an email, and it was like, you haven't got the job, but please, this isn't just a standard letter. Please go away, learn Adobe, and come back in a couple of years. So that's what I did. Learned Adobe Premiere, which is awesome most of the time. And then when I went out and did it on my own, when I got made redundant, and I was doing video full time, the guy actually got back in touch. And he was like, do you want to come work for us? And I was like, no, actually, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, I'm doing all right by myself now. I don't need you.
Yeah. Especially with the creative sort of process, with photography and videography, is you can't read about it in a textbook. Your style is your style. You can't be taught how to color grade. You can be taught the very, very basics of how to color grade. But then you will have in your head an idea of what looks good. I have an idea in my head of what looks good. And I was really scared when I first got into color grading, because it is such a deep sort of thing to get into. And I was like, what if people don't like it? What if people think this is too warm or this is too cold? It doesn't matter. People aren't looking at it like, oh, that's a bit warm or that's a bit cold. They look at it and think like, oh, I like this image.
You said you can really get into the weeds of what's technically correct, but I don't think that is always the best way to produce good quality work.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get properly lost. And I used to sort of like overanalyze every single edit and like look at it and think, am I cutting it at the right place? Have I got the right smile there? Shall I, look and see if she smiles again or something like that? Whereas now I'll look at it and think, yeah, that's good. And again, it's something I always try and look at from the couple's perspective. You know, if the bride's smiling and you catch like a double chin or something, leave that out. She doesn't need to see that. You've got to think of it from their point of view. I don't really sort of delve into the world of photo because I am very trigger happy. Um, I took some photos. There's a dog place near us, and they do like something. It's like a dog muscle place. Um, and I think I was there for 2-3 hours, and I took 4,000 photos. And I was like, I've got to sit through these 4,000 photos.
How much sort of footage do you come out with after a day?
It can vary massively. So I'd say with an average wedding, I'd say about 100 gig, because we shoot in 1080. So we'd come on average with about 100 gig, but I think one of them I looked at last night was about 200. Because that was a Filipino wedding, actually. That was really fun. But the dance floor was going all night. I ended up staying till the lights came on. And again, that's one of the things we always sort of say, like with the package that we have, is you've got us all day. So that's from bride prep till after first dance. And that's when it gets a bit of a grey area, because if the dance floor's given us more footage, I will stay until we've got absolutely everything. If it's the same 4 or 5 people just dancing around a handbag, that's when I'll be like, right, it's time to go home. But this one just kept giving us stuff, man. It was so good. And it was one of those where you drive home with a smile on your face and you're just like, this is my job. It's weird. I always say to people, it's the strangest job in the world, because I've never worked in a job before where technically my shift finishes, but I just think like, I'm just going to stay for a little bit because I'm having fun. I don't know any other job where you do that. Yeah, I don't think I could ever go back to working for someone else. It's anyone that's interested in getting into this industry, I will try to get them into this industry because I want them to feel what we feel. Like I know I've got a wedding tomorrow, and I'm not going to go to work and think like, oh, I can't really be bothered today. I'll drive there and I'll be like, right, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. Like, even if you are having a bit of a rubbish day, you put a shirt on, you get to bride prep, and you just sort of click into it.
I think that even though it can be stressful at times, that stress does go away once you start. And I think for a lot of people, it's the main thing I hear when going into this industry is like, there's too much stress, too much pressure on the day. And I think there is in your head up until you start.
It does. I think you sort of thrive on the sort of adrenaline, or thrive off the stress. I don't know what it is, but you do get there. Bride prep can go one or two ways. It can be really, really sort of busy and wild, or it can be quite quiet. But I've known busy and wild mornings turn into rubbish nights, and I've known quiet mornings turn into wild nights. So it sounds like really, really corny to say it, but every wedding day, although they follow the same formula pretty much, every wedding day is completely different.
What is the sort of next thing for you, Steve? Are you planning anything? Are you someone that has ideas in the back of their mind of things you would like to do in the next year or two?
Oh man, there's sort of I have like a 5-year plan. Is that what you call them? But ideally, I would love to. So my missus used to film with me. The wife used to film with me. But she's really good at like organizing things. So my 5-year plan, I would say, if I could get a mortgage on like an old warehouse or something like that, stick a bar in it, get a marriage license for it, open that as a venue, and just get the wife to run it because she's she's the organized one. I'm the arty farty away with the fairies one. Like, ooh. I keep saying to my missus, like, come and join us filming again, because she used to film with me, when it was just like a side hustle. But when I did come out and do this full time, I thought that's not really very fair because she's still got a full time job, so she'd be working 6-7 days a week sometimes. But I keep saying to her, if she has a bad day at work, I'm just like, come join the dark side, come do it.
How much of a role does she play on like what you do now?
So she used to be the admin side of things, but I've taken all of that off her now because it's not fair to ask her to get home and plow through emails and things like that. So I do emails. I hate them. I hate emails. I think they're so impersonal and faceless, and that's why I genuinely love meeting people at the pub. Get a pint down them and stuff like that, and just see what makes them tick.
Always good to talk to people in person. Like, just email back. The email response is, "I'll be here at this afternoon."
Yeah,
or like maybe in this pub. We'll have a chat. Have a pint and a chat. I also think like there is something to be said for, like I know like my wife played a big role in what I do. Like even outside of my work, like has never really worked with me in that way, up until sort of very recently started helping a little bit. But like playing the role of being able to be supportive in those early days when I was just starting out and did have another job and was very supportive in allowing me to sort of go after it and helping me to make this a reality.
Yeah. And like I don't thank her enough for this actually. So my wife Steph was exactly the same. When I did get made redundant, that's when I finally thought, like, look, I'm just going to give this wedding thing a go for 6 months. And I did the whole, like off the Simpsons movie. Like, I was like, Marge, you need to trust me. Give me 6 months and just see what happens. And she did. She trusted me. And in that 6 months, it went from, I don't know, call it like 5 weddings a year. And I think we ended up getting like 30 weddings that year, which for us was just outstanding because I'd had a little bit more time to plow into the marketing side of things because I wasn't working a real job. A
real job, as they say. Who needs one of those? It's crazy what can change in half a year, or even a year. Like what you can actually put your mind to and have it turn around. I know I was the exact same. Like it hadn't worked, and I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm really going to do with this. And I was like, no, I need to just hand this a crack, for like 12 months and really go hard at it. And when you put your mind and hand yourself a plan, it's crazy. Things can turn around, and we're now blessed to be able to do this as a job.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot of balls, I think, to do it. So again, this was years ago. I met a photographer at a wedding fair, who is now one of my best friends, and he'd just gone full time. He'd just quit his job and he'd just gone full time photography, and I really respected him for that. I was like, wow, how do you have the plums to do that? And when I did get made redundant, it all happened quite quickly as well. So I found out on call it the Tuesday. I was gone by the Thursday, but I found out on that Tuesday, and I texted my mate Will, and I was like, "Have you got any jobs going?" And he was one of the ones that sort of said, "You need to get into wedding videos full time. You're good at it. Do it. See what happens." And here we are. And again, he is one of my best friends now. And I think, like, I talk to Will probably more than I talk to my actual wife. But I think with this job, especially, with you working from home, not a lot of people talk about it, but I think it can get quite lonely at times. The only person I've got to talk to is the dog. So Will is one of those guys who's in the industry. You can have a moan to him. I was at this venue the other day. The lighting was terrible. Beautiful venue, terrible lighting. It's someone who you can chat to who understands as well. So we're based in Yorkshire, in East Yorkshire, and the industry around here is very supportive. Rather than sort of everyone being against each other, the industry is so supportive. I can get home after a wedding, and I've got a couple of videographers I speak to quite regularly, and I don't see them as competition. I just see them as, we're all doing the same job, which I think is quite cool.
Just sort of reach out to someone online and have that conversation, because it can help so much. As you said, when you work alone, you can drive yourself in a hole of just being at home all day, every day, not having anyone to talk to.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's really important, and it's only a little thing, but so during my day, I usually sort of wake up in the morning, I'll do emails, start editing, and around about 11 o'clock, I'll take the dog for a walk, which is like a really simple task, but you'll get out, you'll see people, you'll talk to people, and it just sort of gets you out of the house a little bit as well. Because I realised the other day, I think I worked for about 14 hours the other day, but I didn't actually leave the house, which is mad.
It's crazy how often that happens, isn't it?
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so wild. Is there anything else that you wanted to leave people with while we're ending out today? Anything about, your career, things that have really helped you as you've gone through it and helped you start and really have the sort of guts to go out there and do what you do now?
I don't know. I think the best advice I could give to anybody is just believe in yourself. I think it's very easy to look at other people's work and think, like, why can't I do that? You aren't other people. I could look at a Fire and Ice video and think, I wish I could do that. But I'm not Fire and Ice. People haven't booked that. The best advice you could give is just believe in yourself. And, if you build it, eventually they will come. Someone will like your stuff. It doesn't matter what you do. It could be photo, video, you could be a florist or whatever. And if you are thinking about the wedding industry, just do it. It's the best thing I ever did.
Thanks so much for jumping on today, Steve. I really appreciate hearing your story as well and hearing about how you go about doing things, hear about the other side of the kind of work that I do.
No, thank you for having us on again, man. And honestly, it's been like a properly cool experience, dude.
Well, that is the end of today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed listening to this conversation half as much as I enjoyed having it. If you did enjoy today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you did leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify. Or if you're watching over on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and leave us a comment down below to let us know that you did enjoy this episode. Also, feel free to share this episode on Instagram and tag me at Mike Jeffrey Photography so I can reshare them on my stories. And also message me and let me know who you would love to hear on an upcoming episode of this podcast. I've always tried my best to be able to have conversations with people who are in the creative space and people that I think would be a good fit on this podcast. And I would love your input as well. In a very privileged position at the moment where, I'm able to reach out to people and have them on my podcast and have really interesting conversations with a whole range of people in the creative space and talk about their creative journey. So if there is anyone you would love to hear from, please let me know and I will do my best to try to get them on the podcast. At this time, I would also like to acknowledge the first creatives of the land on which I am recording today, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of so-called Australia. As we tell stories of today, I just want to reflect on how First Nations people here and across the globe have guided and informed our understanding of the creative journey. But until next week, friends, have a lovely week and I will speak to you all again next Monday. Bye. Editing and post-production on this episode was done by Mossy Media, and music was created by JWPATON.